In the great kingdom of Amora, where the golden savanna stretched beyond the horizon and the mighty baobab trees stood like ancient guardians, there lived a young woman named Kesai. She was the daughter of a merchant, beautiful as the dawn sky and clever as the fox, but her heart burned with an ambition that consumed her like wildfire. Kesai would sit beneath the great baobab tree at the edge of the marketplace, watching as the royal procession passed by each day. The queen rode in a golden palanquin, adorned with jewels that caught the sunlight like captured stars. Her subjects bowed low as she passed, their faces filled with reverence and awe. One day, Kesai whispered to herself, "I will wear that crown. I will rule this kingdom, and all will bow before me." But Kesai was not of royal blood. She was merely a merchant's daughter, and in the kingdom of Amora, only those born to the throne could rule. This truth gnawed at her like a hungry termite, eating away at her dreams night after night. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, Kesai wandered deeper into the baobab grove than she had ever gone before. The trees here were ancient, their trunks so wide that 10 people holding hands could not encircle them. Their branches reached toward the heavens like arms in prayer, and their roots dug deep into the earth's secrets. It was here, in the heart of the grove where even the bravest hunters feared to tread, that Kesai heard the voice. "Why do you weep, child of ambition?" the voice whispered, seeming to come from the very earth itself. Kesai looked around, her heart pounding like the drums at festival time. "Who speaks? Show yourself." From behind the largest baobab tree stepped a figure that made Kesai's blood run cold. It was neither fully human nor fully spirit, but something in between. Its skin shimmered like moonlight on water, and its eyes held the darkness of a starless night. When it moved, the very air seemed to ripple around it. "I am Jengu, keeper of bargains and granter of deepest desires," the creature said, its voice like wind through dry leaves. "I have watched you, Kesai, daughter of Tamoni the merchant. I know the fire that burns in your heart." Kesai's fear warred with her fascination. "You know my name. You know my desires." "I know all hearts that hunger for power," Jengu replied, circling her slowly. "I can give you what you seek. The crown of Amora can be yours, child. You can rule with beauty that never fades and power that never diminishes." Kesai's breath caught in her throat. What would you ask in return?" Jengu smiled, and its teeth gleamed like polished bones. "Nothing you possess now. Only something you will gain in the future. When you bear your first child, that child shall be mine. In exchange, you will have your kingdom, your crown, and your heart's desire." The wind whispered through the baobab leaves, and Kesai felt as though the very trees were listening to her choice. Her mind raced with possibilities. A child she did not yet have for a crown she desperately wanted. It seemed like such a distant price for such an immediate reward. How will this happen?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The queen is old and has no heir," Jengu explained. "Tomorrow, she will fall ill with a mysterious ailment. The royal physicians will be unable to help her. But you, clever Kesai, will appear with a cure I will give you. In gratitude, she will adopt you as her daughter and heir. When she passes to the ancestor realm, the crown will be yours." Kesai's heart pounded with excitement and fear. Everything she had ever wanted was being offered to her on a golden platter. And the price, she didn't even have a child yet. Perhaps she never would. Perhaps she could find a way around the bargain when the time came. "I accept," she said, the words stumbling from her lips before she could stop them. Jengu's smile widened, and it reached into the folds of its shimmering garments. It withdrew a small clay pot, no larger than Kesai's palm, filled with a liquid that glowed like captured moonlight. "When the queen falls ill, bring this to her. Tell the physicians it is an ancient remedy passed down through your family. She will drink it and recover within 3 days. Your destiny will be sealed." As Jengu handed her the pot, its fingers brushed hers, and Kesai felt a chill run through her entire body. For just a moment, She thought she heard the distant cry of a child on the wind, but when she blinked, both the sound and Django had vanished, leaving her alone among the ancient baobab trees. The very next morning, as Django had promised, news spread through the kingdom like smoke from a grass fire. Queen Adana had fallen gravely ill during the night. The royal physicians, wisest healers in all the land, gathered around her bedside, but none could identify her ailment or offer a cure. Kesai's hands trembled as she held the clay pot, but her voice was steady when she approached the palace gates. "I carry an ancient remedy," she told the guards. "My grandmother was a healer, and she passed down secrets that might save our beloved queen." Desperate for any hope, the guards allowed her to enter. Word of her claim reached the chief physician, who, having exhausted all his knowledge, agreed to let the merchant's daughter try a cure. Queen Adana lay upon her royal bed, her once vibrant skin now grey as ash, her breathing shallow as a bird's. When Kesai approached, the queen's eyes fluttered open, and for a moment, Kesai saw such kindness and wisdom in them that her heart nearly broke with guilt. "Your Majesty," Kesai said, kneeling beside the bed, "please drink this. It is an old remedy, but it has great power to heal." The queen, too weak to question, allowed Kesai to help her drink the glowing liquid. As it passed her lips, a shudder ran through the royal body, and the queen's eyes closed once more. For 3 days, as Django had promised, the kingdom held its breath. On the morning of the 4th day, Queen Adana sat up in her bed, her color returned, her strength renewed. The entire kingdom rejoiced, and Kesai was hailed as a miracle worker. "You have saved my life, young one," the queen said, taking Kesai's hands in her own. "What can I give you in return?" "Gold. Jewels. Land." Kesai bowed her head, playing the part of the humble healer. "Your Majesty, I want nothing but to serve you. Perhaps I could remain in the palace, to be near you should you ever have need of healing again." The queen, moved by what she believed was selfless devotion, agreed immediately. Kesai was given quarters in the palace and a position as the queen's personal companion. But this was only the beginning of Django's plan. Over the following months, Kesai proved herself invaluable to the queen. She was intelligent, beautiful, and seemed to possess an uncanny ability to solve problems and give wise counsel. She helped resolve disputes between nobles, suggested improvements to trade routes, and even predicted when enemy kingdoms might pose threats. What the queen did not know was that each night, Kesai would slip away to the baobab grove, where Django would whisper secrets and strategies into her ear. The spirit creature delighted in the unfolding of its plan, feeding Kesai information that made her appear brilliant and indispensable. "The queen grows to love you as a daughter," Django observed one night, its form seeming even more translucent than before. "Soon, she will make her choice." And indeed, as the seasons turned, Queen Adana began to speak of succession. She had never married, never borne children, and her closest relatives were distant cousins more interested in their own small holdings than in ruling a kingdom. More and more, she turned to Kesai for advice, and more, she began to see in the young woman the qualities of a true leader. "Kesai," the queen said one evening as they walked in the royal gardens, "you have become like a daughter to me. You have wisdom beyond your years, courage in the face of danger, and a heart that truly cares for our people." Kesai's throat tightened with guilt, but she forced herself to smile. "Your Majesty honors me with such words." "I have been thinking," the queen continued, stopping beside a fountain where golden fish swam in lazy circles, "about the future of our kingdom. I am not young anymore, and a ruler must think of who will follow after." Kesai's heart began to pound, but she kept her expression calm. "Surely your Majesty has many years of wise rule ahead." Queen Adana smiled and placed a gentle hand on Kesai's cheek. "Child, I have decided to adopt you as my heir. You will be Princess Kesai, and when my time comes to join the ancestors, you will rule Amora in my place." The words Kesai had dreamed of hearing for so long now felt like stones in her throat. The queen's kindness, her genuine love, made the deception burn like poison in Kesai's chest. But her ambition was stronger than her guilt. "Your Majesty," she whispered, "I am overwhelmed by your generosity." The adoption ceremony took place under the full moon, with all the nobility of the kingdom in attendance. Kaysai knelt before the queen as sacred oils were poured over her head and the royal medallion was placed around her neck. When she rose, she was no longer Kaysai the merchant's daughter, but Princess Kaysai, heir to the throne of Amora. That night, as the celebration continued in the great hall below, Kaysai stood on her balcony looking out over the kingdom that would soon be hers. The baobab grove was visible in the distance, dark against the starlit sky, and she could swear she heard Django's laughter carried on the wind. 2 years passed, and Queen Adana's health began to fail naturally this time, not through any dark magic but simply through the passage of time. She had ruled long and well, and her body was tired. Princess Kaysai stood by her bedside during her final days, holding her hand and whispering words of comfort, even as her heart raced with anticipation of what was to come. "Promise me," the queen whispered on her final evening, her voice thin as spider silk, "promise me you will rule with wisdom and compassion. Our people deserve a leader who puts their welfare above our own desires." "I promise, Your Majesty," Kaysai replied, and in that moment, she almost meant it. Queen Adana smiled and closed her eyes for the last time. The coronation of Queen Kaysai was the grandest celebration the kingdom had ever seen. She walked through the streets to the great temple, and flowers rained down from windows and rooftops. The crown was placed upon her head by the high priest, and as its weight settled on her brow, Kaysai felt a surge of triumph unlike anything she had ever experienced. She was queen. She had achieved her heart's desire. The merchant's daughter now ruled a kingdom. But even in her moment of greatest triumph, she had something that made her blood run cold. As the crowd cheered and the drums thundered, carried on the wind from the direction of the baobab grove, she heard the cry of a child, distant but unmistakable, heartbroken and lonely. She pushed the sound from her mind. It was nothing. The wind in the trees. Her imagination playing tricks on her. Queen Kaysai ruled with an iron hand wrapped in silk. She was beautiful, intelligent, and powerful, just as Django had promised. Under her leadership, the kingdom prospered. Trade routes expanded, the army grew strong, and the royal treasury overflowed with gold. Other kingdoms sought alliances with Amora, and Kaysai's name was spoken with respect and awe throughout the land. But every night, as she lay in her royal bed surrounded by luxury beyond measure, she heard the crying. It started as a whisper, barely audible above the sound of her own breathing. But as the months passed, it grew louder, more insistent, more heartbreaking. It was the cry of a child who had been abandoned, a child who was lost and alone, calling for a mother who would never come. Kaysai would rise from her bed and stand at her window, looking out toward the baobab grove where the sound seemed to originate. Sometimes she thought she saw a small figure moving among the ancient trees, but whenever she looked directly, there was nothing there. "It's guilt," she told herself. "Nothing more than a guilty conscience creating phantoms in my mind." She threw herself into ruling with even greater passion, as if being the perfect queen could somehow drown out the sound that haunted her nights. She built schools and hospitals, improved roads and bridges, and ensured that even the poorest citizens had enough to eat. If she could not silence her guilt, perhaps she could at least earn forgiveness through good deeds. But the crying continued, night after night, year after year. It was during her 5th year as queen that she made a decision that would change everything. The neighboring kingdom of Zalika had proposed an alliance sealed by marriage. Their prince, Kofi, was young, handsome, and intelligent, everything a queen could want in a husband. More importantly, the alliance would make Amora the most powerful kingdom in the region. Kaysai accepted the proposal. Prince Kofi arrived with great ceremony, and their wedding was even more magnificent than Kaysai's coronation had been. He was kind to her, respectful and loving, and for the first time since making her bargain with Django, Kaysai felt something approaching happiness. On their wedding night, as they lay together in the royal bedchamber, Kofi traced gentle patterns on her arm. You seem troubled, my queen, he said softly. Sometimes I see a shadow in your eyes, as if you carry a great burden. Kesai wanted desperately to tell him the truth, to confess the bargain she had made and the price she would eventually have to pay. But how could she explain that she had traded away a child that didn't yet exist for the crown she now wore? How could she tell this good man that their future together was built on a foundation of dark magic and betrayal? Just the weight of ruling, she replied, forcing a smile. A kingdom is a heavy responsibility. Kofi kissed her forehead tenderly. Then let me help you carry that weight. We will rule together, and whatever troubles you face, you will not face them alone. His kindness only made her guilt burn brighter, but Kesai said nothing. Instead, she allowed herself to hope that perhaps Django would forget their bargain, that perhaps the years had weakened whatever power the creature held over her. She was wrong. 9 months after her wedding, as the rains came to break the dry season's hold on the land, Queen Kesai gave birth to a daughter. The child was perfect in every way, 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, and eyes that seemed to hold all the wisdom of the ancestors. When she was placed in Kesai's arms for the first time, the queen felt a love so fierce and overwhelming that it nearly stopped her heart. "She's beautiful," King Kofi whispered, tears of joy streaming down his face. "What shall we name her?" "Osha," Kesai replied, the name coming to her like a gift from the ancestors. "Hope. She is our hope." For 3 precious days, Kesai lived in a paradise of maternal bliss. She held her daughter constantly, sang to her, whispered promises of all the wonderful things they would do together as Osha grew up. The crying that had haunted her nights was silent, replaced by the soft breathing of her perfect child. But on the 4th night, as storm clouds gathered over the kingdom and thunder roared across the sky, Kesai woke to find her bedchamber filled with an otherworldly chill. She reached for baby Osha in the cradle beside her bed, but her arms closed around empty air. The cradle was empty. "Kofi," she screamed, shaking her husband awake. "The baby. Someone has taken our baby." Guards flooded the chamber, torches were lit, and a frantic search began. But even as servants and soldiers combed every corner of the palace, Kesai knew it was futile. She knew who had taken her child, and she knew why. The bargain had come due. As the searchers spread throughout the palace and into the city beyond, Kesai slipped away into the night. The storm that raged overhead seemed to mirror the tempest in her heart as she ran through the rain-soaked streets toward the baobab grove. She found Django waiting beneath the largest tree, its form more solid and terrible than she had ever seen it. In its arms, baby Osha slept peacefully, untouched by the rain that soaked everything around them. "Give her back," Kesai sobbed, falling to her knees in the mud. "Please, I give you anything else. Take my crown, take my kingdom, take my life, but give me back my child." Django's laugh was like breaking glass. "The bargain is sealed, Queen Kesai. You received everything I promised, the crown, the power, the beauty that does not fade. Did you truly think there would be no price to pay?" "I didn't understand then," Kesai pleaded. "I was young and foolish. I didn't know what it meant to love a child." "And yet you made the bargain willingly," Django replied coldly. "Your daughter will come with me now, to the spirit realm where she will be raised as my own. You will never see her again, but you will keep your crown and your kingdom. Is this not what you wanted?" Kesai looked at her sleeping daughter, at the tiny face so peaceful and innocent, and felt her heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. "What will become of her?" "She will grow strong and wise in the spirit realm," Django said. "She will learn magic and mystery, the secrets of wind and water, earth and fire. She will become powerful beyond mortal imagination." "But she will not be mine," Kesai whispered. "No," Django agreed. "She will not be yours." Thunder crashed overhead, and when the lightning faded, both Django and baby Osha had vanished, leaving Kesai alone in the rain with her grief. She returned to the palace to find it in chaos. King Kofi was leading search parties throughout the city, certain that their daughter had been kidnapped by enemies of the crown. The royal physicians were examining the nursery for signs of how the intruders had entered. The entire kingdom was mobilizing to find their missing princess. There are no signs of forced entry, the chief guard reported to Kofi. No footprints, no disturbances. It's as if the child simply disappeared. Kesai watched her husband's face crumble with despair and knew she could never tell him the truth. How could she explain that she had traded their daughter away before Osha was even born? How could she confess that their child's disappearance was the price of her own ambition? "We'll find her," she told Kofi, taking his hands in hers and lying with every breath. "We'll search every corner of the kingdom. We won't rest until our daughter is home." But even as she spoke the words, Kesai knew they would never find Osha. The child was beyond the reach of mortal searchers, lost in a realm where human love could not follow. The search continued for months. Rewards were offered, neighboring kingdoms were contacted, and every possible lead was pursued. But as time passed and no trace of Princess Osha was found, hope began to fade. The kingdom mourned its lost princess, and King Kofi grew thin and hollow with grief. Only Kesai knew the truth, and the knowledge was slowly destroying her from within. Years passed, but the pain of losing Osha never dimmed. If anything, it grew sharper with time. Every child Kesai saw in the marketplaces reminded her of the daughter she had sacrificed for her crown. Every lullaby she heard made her think of the songs she would never sing to Osha. Every mother she watched with her children was a reminder of the love she had thrown away for power. The crying that had haunted her before Osha's birth returned, but now it was different. Now she recognized the voice. It was her daughter, calling for her across the void between worlds, wondering why her mother had abandoned her. King Kofi, broken by the loss of his child, grew distant and cold. He still performed his royal duties, but the joy had gone out of him. Sometimes Kesai would catch him staring out the window toward the baobab grove, and she wondered if somehow he sensed the truth. "Do you ever think about having another child?" he asked one evening as they sat in their private chambers. The question hit Kesai like a physical blow. Another child would mean another bargain with Jengu, another innocent soul traded for power she already possessed. I cannot bear to think of it," she replied, which was true, though not for the reasons Kofi assumed. "Perhaps you are right," he said sadly. "How could another child ever replace our lost Osha?" Kesai wanted to tell him that Osha wasn't lost, that she was alive somewhere in the spirit realm, growing up without the love of her parents. But the words stuck in her throat like thorns. The kingdom continued to prosper under Kesai's rule, but she took no joy in her achievements. Every success felt hollow, every triumph meaningless. She had gained the whole world but lost her soul, and now she was losing her mind as well. She began making midnight visits to the baobab grove, calling out to Jengu, begging for news of her daughter or even just a glimpse of her face. But the spirit creature never appeared, leaving Kesai alone with her guilt and grief. It was during one of these midnight visits, 15 years after Osha's birth, that Kesai first saw her. A young woman stepped out from behind one of the great baobab trees, and Kesai's heart nearly stopped. She was tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to glow with inner light and eyes that held the depth of ancient wisdom. Her hair flowed like water, and when she moved, the very air seemed to shimmer around her. But it was her face that made Kesai gasp with recognition. Despite the otherworldly beauty and the years that had passed, this was unmistakably her daughter. "Osha," she whispered. The young woman tilted her head, studying Kesai with curious intensity. "That was the name you gave me at birth," she said, her voice carrying the music of wind chimes and distant thunder. "But I have been called many names in the spirit realm. I am known as Nyambie, child of the sky god." Tears streamed down Kesai's face as she took a step forward, her arms reaching out instinctively. "My daughter. My precious daughter. You've grown so beautiful." "But Osha," Nyambie stepped back, her expression cool and distant. "I am not your daughter," she said. "You gave up that right when you traded me away for a crown." The words hit Kesai like physical blows. "You know." "I know everything," Nyambie replied. "In the spirit realm, all secrets are revealed. I know that you bargained with Jengu, trading your unborn child for power. I know that you chose ambition over love, a crown over your own flesh and blood." Kesai fell to her knees in the dirt, her royal robes forgotten. "Forgive me," she sobbed. "I was young and foolish. I didn't understand what I was doing. If I could take it back, if I could undo that terrible choice, I would give up everything." "Would you?" Nyambie asked, circling her slowly. "You sit on a throne built on betrayal. You rule a kingdom with hands stained by abandonment. Every day you continue to benefit from the bargain that cost me my childhood, my family, my place in the mortal world. What do you want from me?" Kesai whispered. As the guards gently but firmly escorted her from the throne room, Kesai caught sight of a familiar figure in the shadows near the great pillars. Nyambie stood there, watching with those ancient eyes, and for just a moment, mother and daughter looked at each other across the chasm of betrayal and loss. "This is your doing," Kesai whispered. Nyambie stepped forward, her voice carrying clearly despite the distance. "This is justice," she replied. "You traded away your child for a crown. Now you have lost both. Zora will rule with the wisdom and compassion you never possessed, and I will return to the spirit realm knowing that the kingdom is in better hands." "And what of me?" Kesai asked, her voice breaking. "You will live the life of a common woman," Nyambie said. "You will know what it means to struggle, to be powerless, to depend on the kindness of others. Perhaps in time, you will learn the value of the things you threw away." With that, she began to fade once more. But before she disappeared entirely, she spoke one final time. "If you truly wish for forgiveness," she said, "then prove that you have changed. Live a life of service. Help others as you never helped your own daughter. Show the world that redemption is possible, even for those who have fallen the furthest." Then she was gone, leaving Kesai alone with the ruins of her ambition and the terrible weight of her choices. 20 years passed, and the old woman who had once been Queen Kesai became known throughout the markets and poor districts of Amora as simply Grandmother Kesai. She lived in a small mud brick house at the edge of the city, earning her bread by helping others. She became a midwife, helping to bring children into the world and never asking for more payment than a simple meal. She comforted grieving mothers, tended to sick children, and became a source of wisdom and comfort for those who had nothing. The irony was not lost on her. She had spent her reign trying to be a perfect queen to assuage her guilt over abandoning her daughter, but she had never learned to connect with her people on a personal level. Now, stripped of power and position, she finally understood what it meant to truly serve others. Every child she helped deliver reminded her of Osha, the daughter she had held for only 3 precious days before losing her forever. Every mother she comforted carried the echo of her own grief. Every act of kindness was both penance and prayer, a small offering to the universe in hopes that somehow, somewhere, her daughter might feel the love that was too late to give. Queen Zora ruled wisely and well, just as Nyambie had promised. Under her leadership, the kingdom flourished in ways it never had under Kesai's rule. The people were happy, prosperous, and safe. King Kofi, though he sometimes seemed puzzled by memories he couldn't quite grasp, was content with his life and devoted to the wife he believed he had always known. Kesai watched from afar as the royal couple adopted orphan children from throughout the kingdom, giving them love and opportunities they would never have had otherwise. She saw how Zora's eyes lit up when she held these children, how Kofi's laughter returned when they played in the palace gardens. This was what a royal family should look like, built on love, not ambition. One evening, as Kesai sat beside the bed of a sick child in the poorest district of the city, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to see a young woman entering the small dwelling, carrying herbs and medicines. It was Nyambie, but she looked different now. The otherworldly glow had softened into something more human, though her beauty remained ethereal. She moved with the confidence of someone who had found her place in the world. "The child has fever sickness," Kesai said quietly, not sure if her daughter would acknowledge her presence. "I know," Nyambie replied, kneeling on the other side of the bed. I felt her suffering from far away. Together, without speaking, they worked to tend the child. Nyambie's hands glowed with healing power as she placed them on the little girl's forehead, while Kesai prepared cooling cloths and whispered words of comfort. It was the first time mother and daughter had walked side by side, united in purpose. The child's fever broke just before dawn, and she slipped into peaceful sleep. Her mother, who had been keeping vigil in the corner, wept with relief and gratitude. "Thank you," the woman said, looking between Kesai and Nyambie. "Both of you. You have given me back my daughter." After the grateful mother had fallen asleep beside her child's bed, Kesai and Nyambie stepped outside into the cool morning air. The sun was rising over the kingdom, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. "Why did you come?" Kesai asked softly. "I have been watching you," Nyambie replied. "For 20 years, I have watched as you lived among the people you once ruled, serving them with no thought of reward or recognition. I have seen you comfort mothers who lost their children, knowing that you carried the same grief. I have watched you deliver babies with tears in your eyes, remembering the daughter you held for only 3 days." They walked together toward the edge of the city, where the great baobab tree stood sentinel against the morning sky. It was here that everything had begun, so many years ago, with a young woman's desperate bargain. "The spirits have been talking," Nyambie continued. "They say that true redemption is possible for anyone who genuinely seeks it. They say that love can bridge even the greatest chasms, if the heart that seeks to cross is truly repentant." They reached the largest baobab tree, the one where Django had first appeared to tempt young Kesai with visions of power and glory. Now it stood silent and peaceful in the morning light, just an ancient tree that had witnessed the rise and fall of countless dreams. "I cannot undo the past," Kesai said, placing her hand on the rough bark of the great tree. "I cannot take back the choice I made or give you the childhood you deserved. But I want you to know that not a day has passed that I haven't regretted that terrible bargain. Not a moment has gone by that I haven't wished I could trade everything I gained to hold you in my arms again." Nyambie was quiet for a long moment, studying her mother's lined face, her work-worn hands, her simple clothes. This was not the proud queen who had once sat upon a golden throne. This was a woman who had been broken by her choices and rebuilt herself through service to others. "In the spirit realm," Nyambie said finally, "I learned that the greatest magic is not power over others, but the power to transform oneself. You are not the same person who made that bargain with Django. That woman died the night she lost her daughter. The person who stands before me now is someone who has learned the true meaning of love." She reached into the folds of her robe and withdrew something that made Kesai's breath catch in her throat. It was a small wooden door, carved with loving care and worn smooth by tiny hands. "I made this when I was 7 years old," Nyambie said, offering it to Kesai. "Django told me it was foolish to make toys that reminded me of the mortal world, but I couldn't stop myself. I pretended it was my mother, and I would talk to it at night, telling it about my day, asking it to sing me lullabies." Kesai took the doll with trembling hands, her vision blurred by tears. "You thought of me every day," Nyambie admitted. "Even when I was angry, even when I planned my revenge, I thought of you. I wondered what you looked like, what your voice sounded like when you sang, whether you ever thought of the daughter you had lost." "Always," Kesai whispered. "Every moment of every day." They stood together beneath the ancient baobab tree as the sun climbed higher in the sky, and for the first time in 35 years, Kesai felt a glimmer of hope in her heart. "I cannot come back," Nyambie said gently. "I belong to both worlds now, mortal and spirit, and I have duties in both. But I wanted you to know that I forgive you. More than that, I wanted to thank you. Thank me, Kesai asked in surprise. For showing me that it's never too late to choose love over power, service over selfishness, redemption over despair. Your example has taught me more about being human than all my years in the spirit realm. Because of you, I know that even the darkest hearts can find light again. Nyambie began to glow with soft, warm light, and Kesai knew that her daughter was preparing to return to the spirit realm. But before she faded completely, she stepped forward and embraced her mother, the first embrace they had shared since Osha was 3 days old. Live well, mother, she whispered. Continue to serve others. Continue to love. And know that somewhere between the mortal world and the realm of spirits, your daughter watches over you with pride. As Nyambie's form dissolved into motes of golden light that danced among the baobab leaves, Kesai felt a weight lift from her heart that she had carried for so long she had forgotten what it felt like to be free of it. She walked back toward the city, clutching the small wooden doll to her chest. There was work to be done, children to tend, mothers to comfort, lives to touch with the healing power of selfless love. She was no longer a queen, but she had found something far more precious than any crown. She had found her way home to the woman she was always meant to be. And in the distance, carried on the morning breeze, she could swear she heard the sound of a child's laughter, not the heartbroken crying that had haunted her nights for so many years, but the joyous sound of a daughter who had finally found peace. The merchant's daughter had learned, at last, that the greatest treasure was never gold or jewels or crowns of power. The greatest treasure was love freely given, service joyfully rendered, and the knowledge that even in the darkest night, dawn will always come for those who wait with hope in their hearts. And so ends the tale of the queen who traded her child for a crown, and found that in losing everything, she had gained the most precious gift of all, the chance to become the person she was always meant to be.